Broken bodies, broken dreams behind the pyrotechnics of the squared circle. 10 once unstoppable WWE icons now sit in concrete cages, their tales darker than any scripted heel turn. From twisted crimes of passion to jaw-dropping fraud, each chapter drips with Hollywood scandals the cameras were never meant to catch. Ready to step behind the curtain? Stay till the final bell and brace yourself, because the next mugshot might belong to your childhood hero. Brian D.T. Porter McGee. Brian McGee, once known in the ring as D.T. Porter, went from wrestling fame to a chilling downfall that shocked even those familiar with Hollywood scandals. In July 2013, everything unraveled. Outside his Florida apartment, McGee unleashed a violent outburst on his girlfriend. By the time police arrived, it was already too late, and the scene was as disturbing as the digital trail he left behind. Just minutes after the attack, McGee took to social media, making cryptic posts that sounded more like bragging than remorse. When officers reached the scene, they discovered the woman's body, but McGee was already on the run. His attempted escape didn't last long. After crashing his vehicle during a police chase, he was taken into custody and hospitalized. Once cleared medically, authorities charged him with first-degree unlawful killing. His first court appearance made headlines. McGee's legal team asked for bail, but the judge immediately shut it down. Given the severity of the crime and the reckless social media posts, the court ruled he'd remain behind bars until trial. That trial dragged on for nearly 3 years. Finally, in July 2016, the jury handed down a guilty verdict, and the judge didn't hold back. McGee was sentenced to life in prison without parole, the harshest punishment allowed. Life means life, the judge declared. And for Brian McGee, that sentence is now his permanent reality. But this story gets even darker. Despite his conviction, reports later revealed McGee somehow received nearly $50,000 from the Mississippi government. Why? That's a mystery in itself. And trust us, if you thought this was wild, the next name on our list takes things to a whole new level. Comment 10 if you're watching to the end, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more untold WWE stories. Harrison Hardbody Norris. Harrison Hardbody Norris had the look of a wrestling legend and the discipline of a military man. But behind the scenes, his life was far darker than the spotlight ever revealed. In 2005, whispers began circling around Georgia. Local police were tipped off that something wasn't right at Norris's home. What they found was worse than anything they expected. Multiple women allegedly trapped inside his property and living under his control. When the FBI got involved, things escalated fast. They raided both of Norris's houses and confirmed the worst. 8 women, all claiming they'd been manipulated, isolated, and forced to follow strict rules. The details were grim, the accusations even worse. But due to platform policy, we'll just say it was enough to spark a national frenzy of Hollywood gossip around the former wrestler. In October 2005, Norris was arrested. But in a bizarre twist, he refused a lawyer. That's right, he went to trial alone, defending himself in front of a federal jury. With zero legal experience, he tried to claim it was all just wrestling boot camp gone misunderstood. But the testimony told a different story. One woman described a list of commandments they were forced to follow. Others said Norris kept them in debt, punished them financially, and made sure they couldn't leave. And the jury didn't hesitate. In 2008, Harrison Hardbody Norris was sentenced to life in prison. No parole, no comeback. From promising coach to inmate for life, his downfall wasn't just a scandal. It was a warning. Eugene Mark Zumhoff. Once known as the king of rock and roll in the wrestling world, Eugene Buck Zumhoff had a flashy persona and a devoted fan base. But his reputation would soon come crashing down in one of the most disturbing scandals ever to hit pro wrestling. In May 2013, authorities arrested Zumhoff on multiple felony charges tied to deeply inappropriate behavior. What stunned everyone even more was that these accusations involved his own daughter. A trial was scheduled quickly, and the courtroom would soon become the stage for one of wrestling's darkest chapters. During the trial, Zumhoff's daughter took the stand. Her testimony was powerful, specific, and left the jury in no doubt. One by one, the charges stuck. He was found guilty on all 12 felony counts, but the drama didn't end there. As soon as the verdict was read, Zumhoff made a desperate move. In a moment of chaos, he tried to flee the courthouse, sprinting down the hall, past security, hoping to vanish before being taken into custody. It didn't work. He was tackled and arrested again, this time for attempting to escape. The judge did not go easy on him. With no hesitation, Zumhoff was handed 25 years in prison, a sentence that will keep him locked up until he turns 80. The defense claimed the punishment was excessive, but the court disagreed. "This is an extreme sentence," the judge said, but Mr. Zumhoff's actions were nothing less than extreme. Tammy's Sunny Sitch. At one point, Tammy Sunny Sitch was considered the original WWE diva, glamorous, loud, and impossible to ignore. But what started as a glittering career in the ring spiraled into one of the most tragic Hollywood scandals in wrestling history. In 2022, Tammy was involved in a devastating car crash while speeding through Florida in her Mercedes-Benz. She collided full force into the back of a stopped Kia Sorento at a traffic light. The crash was so violent the driver of the other vehicle didn't survive. Police arrived on the scene and rushed Tammy to the hospital, where blood tests told the rest of the story. Her blood alcohol level, more than 3 times the legal limit. It was clear she'd been behind the wheel while heavily impaired. By May 2022, Tammy was officially arrested. The charges? Driving under the influence and causing a fatal incident. She initially posted bail, more than $200,000, but freedom didn't last long. Less than a week later, the judge yanked her bail, calling her a danger to the community. Now Tammy Sitch sits behind bars, awaiting trial. If convicted, she could face decades in prison. Once a wrestling icon, now a cautionary tale, her story is a stark reminder of how fast it can all fall apart. Before we move on, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments, and let's see how far the wrestling world really reaches. Patrick Velvetine Dream Clark. Patrick Clark, better known in the ring as Velvetine Dream, had a promising future in WWE, but in 2022, that future took a sharp and shocking turn, not in the ring, but at his local gym. It all started with a simple request. A gym employee asked Patrick to clear out of a section scheduled for cleaning, but instead of cooperating, Patrick exploded. Witnesses say he refused to leave, began shouting, and when asked to exit the facility entirely, things got physical. Patrick didn't just argue, he allegedly threatened the employee's life, then punched him in the face, sparking a violent brawl. By the time police arrived, both men were bruised, but one detail stood out: bite marks. According to the victim, Patrick bit him during the fight, a disturbing twist that led to Clark's arrest on first-degree battery charges. He was jailed in August 2022 but posted $1,200 bail soon after. Still, trouble followed. Patrick skipped his court appearance, having his attorney file a not guilty plea on his behalf. At the same time, he went public online, declaring his innocence and firing back at the critics. But behind the scenes, his legal troubles only deepened. In September, he was found guilty of violating probation related to an earlier arrest, leading to even more jail time. As the news broke, WWE issued a firm statement. Patrick Clark would not be returning. Between his criminal history and Hollywood gossip linking him to past controversies, his career looks all but over. Teddy Hart. Born into the legendary Hart wrestling family, Teddy Hart had every opportunity to become a WWE icon. But instead of making headlines for championship belts, he's now known for a pattern of arrests that has landed him behind bars once again. It started in October 2020 when Teddy was living in Texas. He was arrested and charged with harming a disabled person, evading arrest, and possession of a banned substance. Authorities didn't mince words. They labeled him a fugitive from justice as far back as May of that year. Despite the severity of the charges, the court handed him a surprisingly light sentence. Just 10 days in county jail, but that wouldn't be the end of his run-ins with the law. Barely a year later, in February 2021, Teddy was arrested again, this time in Virginia. The charges, nearly identical: possession of a banned substance and more legal chaos. Court records didn't reveal the specifics, but the pattern was clear. While fans once hoped for his redemption, Teddy's name now surfaces more in celebrity interviews and police reports than in wrestling circles. With a record that keeps growing, Teddy Hart's story feels less like a comeback and more like a permanent sentence. Ken Wayne. Ken Wayne, known in the ring as Nightmare, became the center of one of the most unsettling Hollywood scandals ever linked to a former WWE star. In September 2014, authorities received a disturbing tip and executed a search warrant on Ken's home in Mississippi. What they uncovered on his personal computer was enough to make headlines and end his freedom. He was arrested and charged with possession of unlawful digital content related to minors. Originally, Ken faced 20 years in prison, a sentence that could have kept him locked up into old age. But in a controversial turn, the prosecution struck a deal. In February 2016, Ken pleaded guilty. In exchange, his prison time was reduced to just 5 years, with the remaining sentence to be served under strict house arrest. On top of that, he was ordered to pay restitution to non-profit organizations and was placed on the state's offender registry. As of today, Ken Wayne remains under house arrest, stripped of his career and legacy. Once known for his intensity in the ring, his name is now a permanent stain in wrestling history. Cain Velasquez. Cain Velasquez was taken into custody for attempted murder after a dramatic incident in California, and what he's been through since has left fans stunned. Witnesses say the situation unfolded while Cain was driving. He spotted a man named Harry Goulart Jr. in another car, and something inside him snapped. Goulart had been accused of crossing boundaries with Cain's underage relative. Though Harry was facing charges, he hadn't been locked up. That's when Cain decided to act. He followed the car, locked eyes with Goulart, and a high-speed chase began, lasting more than 11 miles. Cain eventually caught up, rammed the car, and fired several shots. But instead of Goulart, the bullet struck his father. The older man was badly hurt but eventually recovered. Cain was arrested on the spot and hit with multiple charges, including attempted murder and weapons violations. His legal team fought hard to get him out, but 3 bail requests were denied. Authorities said he was a danger to the public, and still Cain's lawyers pushed back, submitting over 30 letters from the WWE community and even testimony from the minor involved. It wasn't enough to convince the judge at first, but they didn't stop there. They took the case to the 6th District Court of Appeals. In September 2022, Cain pleaded not guilty to all charges, and by November the court finally granted bail at a steep $1 million. Cain paid and walked out of jail after months behind bars, but he wasn't free just yet. House arrest was part of the deal. Despite the restrictions, Cain was granted permission to attend Lucha Libre AAA worldwide in December 2022, a major wrestling event. With police escorting him there, he stepped back into the ring and the crowd erupted with applause. To many, Cain's actions weren't just emotional, they were honorable. Even now, his case is far from over, but in a world full of Hollywood scandals, Cain's story stands out, not just for what happened, but for why it happened. Do you think Cain was defending what mattered most, or did he go too far? Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. Let's hear what you think. Devon Hannibal Nicholson. Canadian wrestler Devon Nicholson, better known to fans as Hannibal, found himself back in legal trouble in August 2022. This time he was arrested and charged in connection with a physical altercation following an alleged attack on a woman. And if the past is anything to go by, this wasn't his first brush with controversy. Just a year earlier, in December 2021, Devon made headlines for all the wrong reasons when he reportedly injured a WWE referee with a foreign object during an event. The incident left the referee with serious injuries and forced him to launch a GoFundMe campaign just to cover his medical bills. The wrestling community was shaken, and Devon's reputation took a massive hit. Now, with fresh charges hanging over him, Devon is once again in the spotlight, but not the kind any wrestler wants. Canadian authorities have kept him under close watch as he awaits trial. If found guilty, he could be looking at several years behind bars. His case has sparked heated Hollywood gossip circles and left fans divided. Was this a one-time loss of control, or part of a pattern too serious to ignore? Only the court can decide, but the damage to his legacy may already be done. What do you think? Is Devon Hannibal's story one of downfall or just destruction? Let us know in the comments. Brett Debiasi. Brett Debiasi, son of wrestling legend Ted Debiasi, is no stranger to the spotlight. But in 2022, his name became tied to something far darker, the largest public embezzlement scandal in Mississippi history. Authorities revealed that over $5 million from the state's welfare fund, money meant to help struggling families, was instead funneled into the hands of celebrities, insiders, and government elites. Among them, Brett Debiasi, who walked away with nearly $50,000. Officially, the funds were tied to a contract for public service work, but Brett confessed in court that he never even began the job. In truth, the money funded a luxury rehab stay, and the rest went straight to his account. That alone would have been scandalous enough. But prosecutors dug deeper. They discovered Brett had submitted forged documents, staged fake events, and even faked teaching a class on drug awareness, a class that never actually happened. As damaging as the evidence was, Brett had one key advantage. He knew everything, and the prosecution wanted that information. To avoid harsh sentencing, Brett agreed to cooperate. In return, authorities postponed his trial and allowed him to help build their case against the major players behind the fraud. He also agreed to pay $5,000 in restitution to victims of the scandal. Today, Brett is still in custody, but his future hangs in the balance. While awaiting sentencing, he's helped secure convictions for several of the scheme's ringleaders. His cooperation could change his fate. This case shocked the nation, not just for the money stolen, but for the celebrities and officials it dragged into the spotlight. And though Brett Debiasi may never be known for his matches in the ring, he's now a central figure in one of Mississippi's most talked about political crimes. You won't hear this kind of truth in most celebrity interviews, but behind the fame, sometimes corruption runs deeper than anyone expected. Buff Bagwell. Buff Bagwell once embodied the glitz and bravado of professional wrestling's golden era. As a five-time WCW Tag Team Champion and a prominent member of the NWO, he was the epitome of 90s wrestling charisma. However, his life outside the ring has been marred by a series of legal troubles and personal challenges. In 2021, Bagwell faced multiple misdemeanor charges in Cobb County, Georgia, including driving under the influence, reckless driving, and providing false information to law enforcement. These incidents marked the beginning of a tumultuous period for the former wrestling star. Despite efforts to turn his life around, including seeking assistance from fellow wrestler Diamond Dallas Page, Bagwell's struggles persisted. In November 2023, he was arrested again for a misdemeanor charge of speeding and driving under the influence of drugs. This arrest occurred during a court hearing related to his DUI drug court program, highlighting ongoing issues with compliance. Bagwell has publicly acknowledged his challenges, stating, "I did serve 24 hours for losing my temper, and I'm working on keeping my cool every day." He has emphasized his commitment to sobriety, asserting that recent violations were not due to relapse, but rather breaches of program rules. As of early 2025, Bagwell continues to navigate the consequences of his past actions, including serving brief jail sanctions for program violations. His journey underscores the complexities of personal redemption and the enduring impact of one's choices. Billy Jack Haynes. Once a towering force in the wrestling ring during the golden age of WWF, Billy Jack Haynes is now making headlines for all the wrong reasons. In early 2024, a shocking incident turned this former superstar into the center of a real-life nightmare. Police were called to his home in Portland, Oregon after reports of violence. Inside, they discovered his wife, Jeanette Beecraft, dead from a gunshot wound. What followed was a tense standoff, armed, volatile, and unpredictable. Eventually, Haynes surrendered and was taken into custody without further incident. Now facing charges including second-degree homicide and illegal possession of a firearm, Haynes sits behind bars awaiting trial. The wrestling world was stunned. For a man who once battled Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania, this descent into darkness feels like a page torn from the most tragic of Hollywood scandals. Daniel Rodimer. Daniel Rodimer once stepped out of the wrestling ring and into the political spotlight, even running for Congress. But in a twist darker than any wrestling storyline, Rodimer is now facing one of the most serious accusations imaginable. In October 2023, Rodimer was charged following the tragic death of Christopher Tapp at a Halloween party in Las Vegas. Tapp's story was already known across the nation. He had spent years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit, only to be exonerated later. But just when it seemed his life had turned around, it ended in a violent confrontation that allegedly involved Rodimer. Authorities claim the altercation began after Tapp reportedly offered something inappropriate to Rodimer's stepdaughter, sparking a deadly response. Rodimer later surrendered to police and was released on a $200,000 bond. But the charges still hang heavy, and the trial could determine the rest of his life. This shocking fall from grace isn't just another entry in Hollywood scandals. It's a chilling reminder that fame and fury are a dangerous mix. Michael Droz. Michael Droz, once known to WWE fans as Duke the Dumpster Droz, made his name in the 90s with grit, gloves, and garbage can props. But decades later, he's no longer battling opponents in the ring. He's facing federal charges that could bury his legacy forever. In May 2025, a Warren County grand jury indicted Drozy after investigators accused him of trying to access disturbing material through the dark web. The allegations were enough to land him in federal custody, where he now awaits trial behind bars. The case has sent shockwaves through both the wrestling world and beyond, reigniting conversations around privacy, internet crime, and the hidden lives of public figures. It's the kind of story that turns heads in celebrity interviews. Not for what's said, but for what's revealed. For a man who once played a blue-collar hero, Droz's real-life storyline is now playing out in the cold, unforgiving reality of a courtroom. Kyle Snyder. Kyle Snyder once stood atop the world as an Olympic wrestling champion, an American hero known for discipline, strength, and unshakable focus. But in May 2025, headlines told a very different story. Snyder was caught in the middle of an anti-prostitution sting operation in Columbus, Ohio. Authorities say he contacted an undercover officer and allegedly offered money in exchange for inappropriate services. Though he wasn't taken into custody, he was cited at the scene and now faces a court appearance scheduled for May 19th. The revelation stunned fans and cast a shadow over a once sterling legacy. From gold medals to courtroom summons, the fall was fast and unexpected, fueling new waves of speculation across celebrity interviews and social platforms. As Snyder prepares to face the judge, the world watches, wondering how a figure of such discipline could stumble so publicly. Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy was once the fearless high flyer who defied gravity and captivated millions. But outside the ring, his real battle was far more dangerous and far more personal. By the late 2000s, Hardy's downward spiral was no secret. In 2009, during one of his lowest points, he was arrested after authorities discovered a stash of restricted substances. A year later, Hardy didn't fight the charges. He admitted guilt and accepted the consequences. His sentence, 30 months in total, but only 10 of those were served behind bars. The rest played out under strict probation, a chance to reset, but only on paper. Fast forward a decade and history seemed to echo. Hardy was arrested again, this time for public intoxication. While it didn't land him back in serious legal trouble, it reignited concern about his long-running struggles. From wrestling legend to courtroom headlines, Jeff Hardy's story is more than just a cautionary tale. It's a real-life chapter in the world of Hollywood scandals that fans never saw coming. Stone Cold Steve Austin. He smashed beers, raised hell, and ruled the ring like no other. But in 2002, Stone Cold Steve Austin's name made headlines for a reason no one saw coming. That year, his ex-wife, Deborah Marshall, came forward with serious accusations that led to Austin's arrest. The story stunned fans around the world and cast a long shadow over the legend's legacy. While Austin continued to appear in public and even gave a few celebrity interviews, the controversy never truly left him. Behind the larger-than-life persona was a personal life that spiraled into scandal, one that fans still whisper about today. WWE's toughest rebel met a reality he couldn't stun, his own reputation cracking in the face of a moment he couldn't walk away from. Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho has built a career as one of the most charismatic and unpredictable figures in wrestling history. But even the best can find themselves in headlines for all the wrong reasons. In 2010, while touring with WWE in Kentucky, Jericho's night took a wild turn. He was arrested after a public disturbance outside a bar, a moment that caught fans completely off guard. Police reports describe both Jericho and a fellow wrestler as being out of control in public. He was quickly taken into custody and spent a short time behind bars. Though the incident didn't lead to major jail time, it made one thing clear. Jericho's off-screen persona could be just as chaotic as his in-ring theatrics. Since then, he's worked hard to reshape his image through podcasts, rock concerts, and high-profile celebrity interviews. But that one night remains a footnote that fans haven't forgotten. From world titles to mugshots, Jericho's journey proves that fame can flip in an instant. Jimmy Snooker. Jimmy Superfly Snooker was a trailblazer in professional wrestling, an icon whose high-flying moves inspired an entire generation. But behind the fame, a dark and controversial chapter unraveled years after his peak. Back in 1983, the wrestling world was shaken by the mysterious death of Snooker's girlfriend. At the time, the case was ruled accidental. But decades later, in 2015, the story resurfaced, this time with serious consequences. Authorities reopened the case and Snooker was charged in connection to her death. By then, he was in declining health and struggling to stand trial. The legal battle was cut short when a judge ruled that Snooker was mentally unfit to proceed. He passed away just a year later in 2017, leaving behind a legacy that remains as complicated as it is iconic. While fans once saw him as a hero, whispers of this unresolved case continue to circle, an example of Hollywood gossip colliding with wrestling's golden era. Scott Hall. Scott Hall, famously known as Razor Ramon, lived a life as wild as his wrestling persona. But behind the iconic swagger was a man spiraling through chaos. In 2010, Hall was arrested at a Florida bar after an explosive incident involving aggressive behavior and public disorder. Just a year later, he turned himself in for a previous charge, marking yet another entry in a long line of off-screen struggles. His name became as synonymous with arrests as it was with championships. Hall's long, painful battle with addiction played out publicly, casting a haunting shadow over his larger-than-life career. Though he passed away in 2022, his legacy remains a blend of triumph and tragedy, one of wrestling's brightest stars dimmed by personal demons. His story stands among the most heartbreaking Hollywood scandals ever tied to the world of professional wrestling. Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle isn't just a wrestling legend, he's an Olympic hero. But even gold medalists can fall hard, and Angle's post-ring life has been marred by a series of alarming incidents behind the wheel. Over the years, Angle faced multiple arrests across different states, all tied to driving under the influence. Each time, headlines followed, and fans watched in disbelief as their once invincible idol became a cautionary tale. Despite the setbacks, Angel's story didn't end there. He's since taken steps to reclaim his life and image, opening up about his struggles in raw celebrity interviews and public statements. But the scars from those encounters with the law still linger. Kurt Angle went from standing on Olympic podiums to sitting in police stations. And it's a fall from grace the wrestling world won't soon forget. Ric Flair. Ric Flair wasn't just a wrestling icon, he was a walking spectacle of style, swagger, and chaos. But in 2005, the Nature Boy made headlines for all the wrong reasons when his fiery temper followed him off the stage and onto the streets. During a heated road rage incident, Flair allegedly grabbed another driver by the neck and even damaged their vehicle in a fit of fury. Police took the situation seriously, and legal action quickly followed. Though the case didn't lead to serious jail time, it became yet another controversial moment in Flair's already wild legacy, a reminder that the drama didn't stop when the cameras turned off. From championship belts to courtroom appearances, Ric Flair's life has blurred the line between legend and scandal, a real-life episode straight out of Hollywood gossip. Allison Mack. Allison Mack, known for her roles in Smallville and Wilfred, was once a beloved actress, but her fame took a dark turn when she became entangled in one of the most notorious cults of the 21st century. NXIVM, originally presented as a self-help group and multi-level marketing company, was founded by Keith Raniere. While it promised personal and professional growth, it turned out to be much more sinister, with accusations of being a pyramid scheme and an exploitative recruitment ring wrapped in one. The cult preyed on vulnerable people, psychologically breaking them down and forcing them into servitude. Mack's involvement was chilling. She wasn't just a member, she was a key player. Allegedly, she became Raniere's partner and mastermind behind the twisted initiation rituals, which included branding women with Raniere's and Mack's initials. The branding, which took place in her home, marked the beginning of their terrifying journey into slavery. But that was just the start. Mack reportedly used blackmail, manipulation, and forced labor to control women, coercing them into doing her bidding and participating in unspeakable activities. She was the one who recruited vulnerable women, luring them into the cult and enslaving them under the guise of empowerment. In 2018, the FBI arrested Mack on charges of trafficking, forced labor, and conspiracy. She pled guilty to racketeering and racketeering conspiracy charges, and though her sentencing is still pending, she could face up to 40 years behind bars. Her fate, like Raniere's, seems sealed. Raniere was sentenced to 120 years in prison for his role in orchestrating the crimes. This remains one of the darkest Hollywood scandals ever to emerge from behind the red carpet's glitz. Young QC. Kane Wilson, better known by his stage name Young QC, wasn't famous for his talent, but for the chilling crime that turned his name into a nightmare. A rapper whose thirst for fame and wealth led him down a dark and twisted path. Wilson's rise to infamy came at the cost of the one person who loved him unconditionally, his mother. Yolanda Holmes, Wilson's late mother, adored him. She spoiled him with everything he desired, from expensive cars to luxury clothes and jewelry, but for Wilson, it was never enough. Driven by greed and an insatiable desire for more, he plotted the unthinkable, contracting a hitman to murder his own mother. The motive, inheriting her savings and life insurance. Wilson stood to gain over $90,000 from his mother's estate, along with an additional $70,000 from her bank accounts. After her death, he used the money to upgrade his lifestyle, buying a new car, designer clothes, and flaunting his newfound wealth. Wilson openly reveled in his riches, showing off stacks of cash on social media and even throwing thousands of dollars into a crowd during a publicity stunt. But the public display of wealth couldn't mask the horror behind his rise to fame. For the horrific crime of murdering his mother for money, Wilson was sentenced to 99 years in prison. He may have gained the wealth he craved, but at the cost of his soul, and now he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. Joe Exotic. Once the flamboyant zookeeper of the Greater Wynwood Exotic Animal Park, Joe Exotic, born Joseph Maldonado Passage, captivated the world with his eccentric persona and a self-proclaimed title as the most prolific tiger breeder in the US. His life, a whirlwind of big cats, online reality shows, and political aspirations, took a dark turn when his obsession with rival Carole Baskin led to a criminal downfall. In 2019, Exotic was convicted on multiple charges, including a murder-for-hire plot against Baskin, violations of the Endangered Species Act, and falsifying wildlife records. Originally sentenced to 22 years, a 2022 resentencing reduced his term by just 1 year, leaving him with a 21-year sentence. Despite his incarceration, Exotic's life remains as sensational as ever. In April 2025, he married fellow inmate Jorge Marquez, a 33-year-old from Mexico, at the Federal Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. The couple's relationship has been a source of support for Exotic, who continues to battle health issues, including prostate and lung cancer. Exotic has not given up on seeking freedom. He claims to possess new evidence that could overturn his conviction and is actively pursuing a presidential pardon. His efforts include a bold plan to raise $5 million to prevent Marquez's deportation, inspired by a proposed policy allowing non-citizens residency for such a fee. As of now, Joe Exotic remains incarcerated, his larger-than-life saga continuing behind bars. Unless a legal miracle occurs, he is poised to remain in prison well into 2040, a stark contrast to his once glamorous, albeit controversial, life. War Machine. Jonathan Paul Koppenhaver, better known by his infamous name War Machine, was once a rising star in the MMA world. But his violent temper and criminal history have ensured he's more remembered for his actions outside the ring than inside it. War Machine's trouble with the law began as far back as 2007, when he was convicted of assaulting a man so severely that the victim was left unconscious. His punishment: 3 years probation and 30 days of community service, a slap on the wrist compared to what was to come. By 2010, his out-of-control behavior caught up with him again, landing him behind bars for 2 years following a felony assault charge. But it's what happened in 2017 that sealed his fate, and why War Machine is unlikely to ever see the light of day again. That year, he brutally attacked his ex-girlfriend and an associate at her home, an incident so horrifying it shocked even his most devoted fans. He was hit with 29 felony counts, including charges for domestic violence, kidnapping and assault, and sentenced to a life term in prison. His only hope for freedom? A parole hearing after 36 years. Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein wasn't just a film producer, he was a kingmaker. The man behind Pulp Fiction, Shakespeare in Love, and countless Oscar winners. With 7 Tony Awards and an Academy Award under his belt, he once ruled Hollywood. But by 2017, that empire collapsed in the most explosive downfall the entertainment world had ever seen. Over 80 women came forward with shocking accusations, allegations that shattered his reputation and exposed decades of abuse hidden behind red carpets and closed doors. The fallout was immediate. Weinstein was kicked out of his own company, blacklisted by the Academy, and publicly condemned across the globe. His name, once synonymous with prestige, became a symbol of disgrace. In 2018, Weinstein was arrested. By 2020, he was convicted of 2 felony charges and sentenced to 23 years behind bars. In April 2024, Weinstein's 2020 New York conviction was overturned due to procedural errors, leading to a retrial that began in April 2025. The retrial features testimony from former model Kaya Sokola, who alleges Weinstein assaulted her in 2006 when she was 19. The defense challenged her credibility by referencing a private journal from 2015, which omitted mention of Weinstein in the context of assault. Despite this, Sokola maintained her allegations, stating Weinstein both misled and assaulted her. Awards stripped, honorary titles gone. His honorary doctorate and France's prestigious Legion of Honor were both revoked. Even British Parliament called for his royal title to be erased. His wife, fashion designer Georgina Chapman, walked away, and nearly every corner of Hollywood turned its back on him. Weinstein's luxurious life turned into a locked cell, and unless miracles happen in court, he'll still be behind bars when 2040 rolls around, and probably for the rest of his life. Before we dive into the next shocking name on this list, tell us, what country are you watching from? Be sure to stick to the end to see one of the most dangerous actors from Hollywood, if you thought that story was crazy. Josh Duggar. Joshua James Duggar, better known as Josh Duggar, rose to fame on the hit reality show 19 Kids and Counting. But his image as a wholesome family man crumbled in the worst way. By 2015, The Washington Post had even listed him among the 15 most disliked people on the internet. Why? Because disturbing revelations came to light. Duggar had been accused of inappropriate behavior towards several underage girls, including members of his own family, when he was just 14. His parents tried to handle the situation privately, enrolling him in a program that involved physical labor and counseling, but eventually the truth spilled into the public eye. As outrage grew, Duggar stepped down from his position at a political advocacy group. Although he was never formally charged for those early incidents, trouble returned years later. In 2021, Duggar was arrested on serious federal charges related to illegal content involving minors. He pleaded not guilty, but if convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine for each count. By 2040, Duggar may still be serving time, a stark reminder of how far one can fall. Michael Jace. Michael Jace, once known for his role as Officer Julian Lowe on the acclaimed TV series The Shield, experienced a dramatic fall from grace that shocked fans and the entertainment industry alike. His portrayal of a dedicated Los Angeles police officer spanned 89 episodes over 7 seasons, earning him recognition in the crime drama genre. However, in May 2014, Jace's real-life actions starkly contrasted his on-screen persona. He called 911 to report that he had fatally shot his wife, April Jace, in their Los Angeles home. The incident occurred in the presence of their 2 young sons, adding a harrowing layer to the tragedy. During the investigation, Jace confessed to the shooting, initially claiming he intended only to wound April by shooting her in the legs. Prosecutors, however, argued that the act was driven by marital discord and financial stress. In May 2016, a jury found Jace guilty of second-degree murder. The following month, he was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison, a term comprising 15 years to life for the murder charge and an additional 25 years to life for the use of a firearm. As of 2025, Jace remains incarcerated at Corcoran State Prison in California. With no successful appeals or parole opportunities reported, he is expected to remain behind bars well into 2040, serving a sentence that reflects the severity of his actions and the profound impact on his family and community. Mark Raowski. Mark Gator Raowski, once a shining star in the skateboarding world, was a legend in the 1980s, known for his groundbreaking moves and sponsorships with top skate brands. His career was poised for even greater success, but 1991 brought a horrific turn that would forever taint his name. In a shocking and brutal act, Raowski was convicted of first-degree murder and of violent assault after he killed Jessica Bergston, a woman he had once dated. The crime was chilling, and the once promising skater's career came crashing down. In 1992, he was sentenced to 31 years to life in prison for his crimes. Now serving his sentence at Donovan State Prison in California, Raowski has had several chances for parole. In November 2024, he faced his 3rd parole hearing in 5 years, only to be denied again. Despite being approved for parole in 2022, the decision was overturned by Governor Gavin Newsom, who cited the need for Raowski to understand more deeply about his crimes. Raowski remains incarcerated with his parole eligibility set for 2027. The skateboarding legend who once captivated fans is now just another inmate paying the price for the horrific actions that destroyed a young woman's life and his own, a tragic chapter in the darker side of Hollywood scandals. Mel Hall, Bobby Beausoleil. Bobby Beausoleil was once a rising figure in the world of rock music, playing in the band The Orchestra and even working with Charles Manson's infamous family. But in 1969, Beausoleil became involved in the brutal murder of Gary Hinman, a music teacher and friend of the Manson family. Beausoleil, along with 2 others, tortured and killed Hinman in a chilling act of violence, all under Manson's orders. The murder was so savage that it left the victim's body mutilated, and the crime became one of the cornerstone events of the Manson family murders that shocked the nation. Beausoleil was arrested and convicted of first-degree murder in 1970, and he has spent the majority of his life behind bars since then. Despite his attempts for parole, his involvement in such a high-profile, heinous crime has kept him in prison for decades. In 2021, at the age of 73, Beausoleil was denied parole for the 12th time, continuing his life sentence with the possibility of parole in 2027. While some have argued that he has shown remorse and tried to distance himself from Manson, the horrific nature of his crime and the lasting damage done to his victim's family cannot be ignored. By 2040, it is likely that Bobby Beausoleil will still be rotting in prison, his days of fame as a musician completely overshadowed by the horrific murder he committed. His name, forever linked to the Manson family and the nightmare that unfolded in 1969, will continue to remind us of how quickly fame can be lost and how evil can take root in the most unexpected places. Once cheered by thousands as a star outfielder in Major League Baseball, Mel Hall now lives behind bars, disgraced, forgotten, and condemned. Hall played for the Yankees and other teams during the 1980s and early 90s, known for his flamboyant style and larger-than-life personality. But behind the scenes, his dark secrets were festering. Years after his retirement, shocking allegations came to light. Hall had been preying on underage girls, using his fame to manipulate and control them. In 2009, those secrets caught up with him. Hall was convicted on multiple counts related to his abuse of minors, including a 12-year-old girl he had coached. The evidence was overwhelming, the testimonies gut-wrenching. The court handed down a 45-year prison sentence, ensuring that Hall will likely die behind bars. By the time 2040 rolls around, Hall will be in his 80s and still imprisoned. The man who once stole bases now has no escape. His name, once on jerseys, is now etched in court records, a permanent symbol of betrayal, exploitation, and lost legacy. Dave Meggett. Once a rising star in the NFL, Dave Meggett was known for his speed, his electrifying plays, and his role as a dangerous return specialist. He was a key part of the New York Giants Super Bowl winning team in 1991, and for a time he was living the dream. A career in the limelight, millions in the bank, and a reputation as one of the NFL's most exciting players. But that dream quickly turned into a nightmare when Meggett's violent side was exposed. Over the years, multiple incidents of domestic violence, assault, and harassment piled up, each more chilling than the last. The final straw came in 2010 when he was convicted of forced misconduct and aggravated assault against a woman he had been dating. Sentenced to 30 years in prison, Meggett's life took a dark turn. Once celebrated by fans and teammates, he was now viewed as nothing more than a predator. The man who once dominated the field was now locked away, his name tarnished beyond repair. As of 2025, Meggett is still serving his sentence, and unless something drastic happens, he'll be behind bars for the rest of his life. With his past catching up with him and no chance for redemption in the eyes of the law, Meggett's legacy is forever defined by his criminal acts, not his athletic accomplishments. His downfall stands as one of the most disturbing Hollywood scandals ever to emerge from the world of sports and fame. Gary Glitter. He once filled stadiums with screaming fans, known worldwide as Gary Glitter, the glam rock sensation behind the anthemic hit Rock and Roll Part 2. But behind the glitter, fame, and flamboyant stage persona was a man hiding monstrous secrets. Paul Gadd's fall from grace was as public as it was horrifying. His decades-long trail of abuse finally caught up with him in the late 90s when police found disturbing images on his computer. That was just the beginning. Over the years, more victims stepped forward, some barely teenagers at the time of the assaults. In 2015, Gadd was convicted of multiple heinous crimes against children, some of which took place during the height of his fame. The court sentenced him to 16 years behind bars, and the judge called him a manipulative predator who used his fame to exploit the vulnerable. In early 2023, Gadd was briefly released, but freedom didn't last long. He was quickly sent back to prison for violating his release terms and trying to access the same dark content that put him behind bars in the first place. Now in his late 70s, Paul Gadd is not expected to ever leave prison again. Time, justice, and the public have all turned against him. The name Gary Glitter is no longer followed by applause, only disgust and disgrace. C-Murder. C-Murder, born Corey Miller, was once a prominent figure in the rap world, known for his gritty lyrics and association with No Limit Records. As part of the legendary group TRU, alongside his brothers Master P and Silk the Shocker, C-Murder was a respected voice in the rap community with a fan base that spanned across the country. His music captured the rawness of street life, but little did fans know that his real life would soon become far more chilling. In 2002, C-Murder's life took a deadly turn. After a nightclub altercation, he was accused of shooting and killing 17-year-old Steve Thomas. Despite his claims of innocence, evidence stacked up against him. Witnesses testified that C-Murder was the man who fired the fatal shot, and in 2009, he was convicted of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. Over the years, C-Murder's legal team has fought to overturn his conviction, but the legal battles have dragged on with no clear resolution. As of now, C-Murder is still incarcerated, and his future behind bars seems all but certain. Ian Watkins. Ian Watkins, the lead singer of the British rock band Lost Prophets, was once a beloved figure in the music world. The band enjoyed success, with hit albums and a massive fan base, and Watkins was celebrated as one of the charismatic frontmen of his generation. But behind his fame and adoration lay a terrifying secret that would ultimately lead to his downfall. In 2013, Watkins was arrested and charged with some of the most horrific crimes imaginable. He was convicted of multiple counts of abusing minors, including the attempted violation of a child and the exploitation of babies. The details of his actions were so vile and disturbing that they shocked even those who were closest to him. His crimes were not just against children. They involved exploiting vulnerable women to enable his depravity. In 2014, Watkins was sentenced to 35 years in prison, with the possibility of serving at least half of his sentence. His once promising music career was shattered beyond repair, and his name became a symbol of betrayal, exploitation, and unspeakable harm. His story remains one of the darkest chapters in modern music history, and one of the most chilling Hollywood scandals to ever cross into the world of rock. Will Hayden. Will Hayden, once the star of the reality show Sons of Guns, became a household name for his expertise in firearms. But his fame quickly crumbled in August 2014, when his life took a terrifying turn. Arrested for crimes against nature involving a child, the news shocked fans and the public alike. The scandal didn't end there. As the investigation unfolded, Hayden's own daughter came forward with disturbing allegations against him, adding more fuel to the fire and making the case even more grotesque. The disgrace was enough to cancel Sons of Guns and end Hayden's career overnight. In May 2017, Hayden was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years, with no chance of parole or sentence reduction. And if that wasn't enough, just 2 months later, in July 2017, a 3rd life sentence was handed down, ensuring he would never walk free again. Do you think Will Hayden deserves to die in prison for what he did? Comment, yes, no mercy, if you think justice was served, or no sentence too harsh if you believe he deserves another chance. Let's see where the world stands. R. Kelly. R. Kelly once ruled the charts, but now his name is forever tainted. In July 2019, his fall from grace became official when federal agents stormed in and arrested him in Chicago. The charges? Absolutely devastating. He was accused of manipulating, isolating, and exploiting multiple women, some of them underage, all while using his fame as a shield. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of a man who ran his life like a criminal enterprise. His trial faced delays due to the pandemic, but justice eventually caught up with him. Kelly was found guilty on multiple counts, including racketeering and engaging in illegal exploitation, and the price, a staggering 30-year prison sentence, with more charges still looming in other jurisdictions. Now locked inside a federal prison, R. Kelly is no longer a superstar. He's inmate number 09627-035, and if his sentence holds, he won't breathe free air again until at least 2049. For a man who once believed he could fly, he's now grounded for good. This case remains one of the most disturbing Hollywood scandals in recent memory. Tay-K, born Tamor Trayvon McIntyre, was a rising rap star whose breakout hit, The Race, stormed the charts, earning him platinum certification and landing him on the Billboard Hot 100 in 2018. But his meteoric rise was just as quickly overshadowed by his criminal actions, and now he's become a symbol of wasted potential. Tay-K's career was abruptly derailed after he was arrested for aggravated robbery. While on house arrest, he grew impatient with confinement and made a reckless decision that would haunt him forever. He cut off his ankle monitor and escaped to Texas. The next chapters in his story were nothing short of disastrous. In Texas, Tay-K committed 2 more aggravated robberies and was accused of killing a man during a violent home invasion in 2017. This was no longer just a case of reckless behavior. It was murder. His crimes caught up with him quickly. After his arrest, Tay-K faced 55 years in prison for the murder and robberies, and on top of that, a $21,000 fine. The worst part? He won't even be eligible for parole until 2024, and by then he'll have spent over 27 years behind bars. At just 24 years old now, Tay-K could very well be rotting in prison when 2040 arrives. A sad reminder of a promising career lost to violence and poor choices. Ryan Grantham. From teen actor to convicted killer, the story of Ryan Grantham is one of the darkest turns Hollywood has ever seen. Known for his role on Riverdale, Grantham stunned the world when he confessed to a crime that felt like fiction. He murdered his own mother. No plot twist, no screenplay, just a brutal reality. In 2020, at just 21 years old, he shot her in the back of the head while she played piano in their home. The most chilling part? After the murder, Grantham filmed her body and calmly admitted what he had done. He later told police he did it to protect her, but the truth pointed to something far more disturbing, a young man spiraling into darkness, consumed by mental illness and violent thoughts. During the trial, it was revealed he had also planned to commit a mass attack, even mapping out a route to assassinate Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Thankfully, that plan never came to life. In 2022, Grantham was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 14 years. That means unless the justice system grants him mercy, he'll still be behind bars well into the 2040 SM. Joe Sun. Joe Sun once played the role of a villain in Austin Powers, but no one could have imagined how much darker his real life was. Behind the corny lines and comedic fights was a man hiding horrific secrets. In 2008, a cold case DNA match exposed Joe Sun as one of the attackers in a brutal 1990 assault involving the kidnapping and torture of a woman on Christmas Eve. The details were beyond disturbing. She was threatened with death, assaulted repeatedly, and left for dead. The crime had gone unsolved for nearly 2 decades until science caught up with him. Sun was convicted in 2011 and sentenced to life in prison, but his story didn't end there. While behind bars, Sun committed another act of violence, this time against his cellmate, who was found beaten to death. The brutality of the attack left investigators stunned, painting a picture of a man with no remorse and no limits. With no chance of parole and additional murder charges hanging over him, Joe Sun will never walk free again. He will rot behind bars for the rest of his life, remembered not for his role in a blockbuster film, but for the darkness he brought into the real world. Elizabeth Holmes. Once hailed as the next Steve Jobs and the face of innovation in Silicon Valley, Elizabeth Holmes was on top of the world. As the founder of Theranos, a blood testing startup that promised to revolutionize the healthcare industry, she dazzled investors, celebrities, and the media with her vision of a healthcare breakthrough. Her youthful charm, iconic black turtleneck, and bold promises made her the darling of the tech world. But her empire crumbled when it was revealed that Theranos was a massive fraud. The cutting-edge blood testing technology didn't work. It was all smoke and mirrors. Holmes and her company had misled investors, patients, and doctors for years, all while collecting millions of dollars in funding. In 2021, after a lengthy trial, Holmes was found guilty of 4 counts of fraud and conspiracy for deceiving investors and patients. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison, with the possibility of serving time for the damage she caused to so many lives. Holmes's fall from grace was as swift as it was dramatic. The woman who once commanded respect and admiration in boardrooms and tech events is now just another convicted felon. Her life of luxury is gone, replaced by the harsh realities of prison. By 2040, Elizabeth Holmes will likely still be serving her sentence, her name forever tied to one of the biggest scandals in Silicon Valley history. The promise of revolutionizing healthcare now serves as a reminder of how greed and deception can destroy everything, no matter how bright your future may seem. On a scale of 1 to 10, how stunned are you by Elizabeth Holmes's rise and collapse? Drop your number plus 1 blazing word, for example, 8, deceived, in the comments and fire up the debate. Suge Knight. Once one of the most powerful men in the music industry, Suge Knight was the man behind Death Row Records, the label that gave rise to legendary artists like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac Shakur. Known for his tough guy persona and his ruthless tactics, Knight was feared by many and respected by few. He was a figure who dominated the rap scene and lived the high life, at least on the outside. But behind that throne of power lay a man whose temper and violent tendencies would ultimately bring him down. Knight was no stranger to controversy, and over the years his name became synonymous with violence, threats, and intimidation. But it was 2015 that marked his downfall in the most dramatic way possible. While on the set of the movie Straight Outta Compton, Knight was involved in a hit-and-run incident that left one man dead and another injured. He drove his truck into 2 men after a confrontation, fleeing the scene before being arrested and charged with murder. In 2018, Knight pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 28 years in prison. As it stands, he will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. His legacy of violence, control, and intimidation has been replaced with the harsh reality of a prison sentence that will leave him forgotten by many. By 2040, Suge Knight's name will likely be just a shadow of his former self, with his reign over the rap game reduced to a cautionary tale. The mogul who once ruled the hip-hop world now has nothing left but the walls of his prison cell. And there you have it, 20 WWE wrestlers currently rotting in jail then and now. Behind the masks, behind the muscles, lies a truth darker than any storyline ever scripted. These aren't just falls from grace. They're crashes that shook the very foundations of sports entertainment. In the world of Hollywood scandals, where fame fades fast, one wrong move can rewrite a legacy forever. Which story shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget, the next headline might feature someone you once cheered for.